Hello? Is this thing on? Yeah, we're live. Okay. So sorry, my eyes are going to be darting around a bit all over the place because I've got notes behind here, and the camera's there. Sorry if that confused you. I'm just going to try and be comprehensive. So I'm here today to talk about the ID at Xbox release date parity policy. It's going to be kind of somewhat technical, businessy. Going to cover some of the ground of what's going on and what some of the issues are, and explain a few of the things. Hopefully you find it useful in understanding the situation. So let's see. So this issue seems to be causing problems for quite a few developers who want to try and release their game on Microsoft's Xbox One console. The rule is that if you want to self-publish a game on Xbox One, Microsoft are requiring that the game is not released on any other console before Xbox One. It has to be Xbox One either first or at the same time as any other console. So to unpack exactly why this is problematic and causing issues for people, I'm just going to consider some of the historical context, see exactly what's changed with Microsoft, and what some of that might mean. So historically, there was on the Xbox 360, there was three ways you could release a game, three main ways you could release a game. So they were, it could be published by Microsoft, it could be published by a third party, or it could be self-published. Each of these ways of releasing a game come with various different strings attached and various different requirements. So here's how these worked. If you were published by Microsoft, Microsoft would typically require a window of platform exclusivity. So that would be for a period of time, it would only be on Xbox, or sometimes only on Xbox and maybe Windows Phone and the Windows 8 App Store as well. And this window was typically going to be 6 months, and during that time, you're contractually bound to not even mention any other version of the game. You can't say, it's 6 months on Xbox and then it's coming to PC. You just have to say it's only on Xbox. It's an Xbox game. Typically, in these situations, Microsoft would be providing some funding, and they'd probably be doing marketing support and various different other things. So examples of games that fell into this category, it's things like Braid, Super Meat Boy, Fez. A lot of the really big, critically acclaimed XBLA games, they were published by Microsoft. If you were going to be using a third-party publisher, so, like an EA, Ubisoft, Sega, whoever. Basically, these different publishers, they were all granted by Microsoft a number of slots for XBLA releases. And, it's not exactly clear how it was determined how many slots each different publisher would get. But from what I heard, it was related to how many full retail releases they did. So, if you released, like, 10 games in a year, you'd get X number of XBLA slots. I'm not sure exactly how that worked. I'd have to do some more research because I think possibly the details of that are under NDA, so there's not really a fully detailed public record of how that worked. So typically, developers would then negotiate a revenue split with the publisher. Possibly the publisher would be financing the game somewhat. And the publisher would be helping with marketing and all sorts of other stuff again, kind of similar to when it was Microsoft publishing the game as well. But because these slots on XBLA were scarce, like there was only a limited number of them, and more people that wanted them than there was available, the publishers were in a pretty major position of power. They could negotiate terms that weren't maybe all that favourable to the developer. Now there's different publishers, different teams within different publishers. Some would be better, some would be worse. But that was the only way. If Microsoft didn't want to publish a game, that's the only way you were likely to be able to get on XBLA at all. So there's some developers who signed with a publisher who they didn't want to. That was just the only way they'd be allowed to release their game. So some games that fit into this category it's games like Bastion or Stacking or Shank. then the third category is self-publishing. So that was only limited. That was limited to just Xbox Live indie games. So they were some pretty heavy restrictions on them. There was limits on pricing. I think the cap the most you could charge I think was $5 or equivalent in Microsoft points. And these games wouldn't get the same kind of store placement that like an XBLA game would. They'd be hidden under a couple of menus of games, so you didn't quite get the same level of public exposure on the dashboard. These games also had to be coded in Microsoft's XNA framework, and so one of the impacts of that meant that it would be difficult to port that game to a non-Microsoft platform. Not impossible, but there was significant extra work. You couldn't use like some of the cross-platform engines that would have been publicly available. So that limited what you could do. So one of the advantages was you didn't have the certification process that would be otherwise associated with releasing on Xbox. Instead, there's still a bunch of criteria that you'd had to meet before you're allowed to release on Xbox Live indie games, but these criteria would be peer reviewed rather than a process that Microsoft do themselves. And the peer review process seemed pretty transparent. Seemed to basically be workable. Looking from the outside in, I've never not got any direct experience of using it myself. But in addition to that, built into the XNA framework were a few features that mitigated the lack of certification. So one of the big ones would be that Xbox Live indie games had always online DRM, so you couldn't play them offline whatsoever. And my understanding for why that was so let's say one of these games that Microsoft haven't certified, let's say developed a bug that could damage your system or open you up to like security vulnerabilities, let your system get hacked or something. If Microsoft discovered one of that, they could press a kill switch and that game would be gone. No one would be able to play that game anymore. So not ideal, but it seemed like a good workaround that enabled a bunch of people that would otherwise not be able to get on Xbox to release their game. So some examples of games that fell into this category were like I Made a Game with Zombies, Beat Hazard, Cthulhu Saves the World. There are a bunch of other great games as well. So yeah, those are the main three ways of releasing on Xbox 360. So things have changed a little bit for the Xbox One. You can still get a game published by Microsoft, and pretty much the same deal as you would have done previously. You can still publish a game with a third-party publisher. Again, pretty similar deal to what you would have done previously. Although I'm not sure how the slot system work. Is like EA limited to a certain number of releases? I don't know. There's no public record of how that works. And now, so instead of Xbox Live indie games and the XNA system that you previously had, like, that's gone, but you can self-publish now through a program called ID at Xbox. And so this is the one that's been causing headlines recently. So the terms of ID at Xbox are fairly straightforward, like for the most part. If you're accepted onto the program, you're allowed to self-publish on Xbox. That means you're liable for organising any funding yourself, either out of your own pocket, crowdfunding, or like venture capitalists, or any other investors. And anyone on the program receives 2 Xbox One dev kits and a Unity Pro license. So let's see. So the problematic aspect, the one that's causing trouble, is the release date parity policy. So that basically means that if you release your game, if you want to release a game self-publishing through ID at Xbox, you can't release that game on any other console platform first. It has to be Xbox and other platforms on release date, or Xbox only on release date, and then other platforms down the line. So this causes a few problems. So firstly, many of the teams that are making games that like Xbox One owners really want to play, these are small teams. You know, maybe it's a solo developer, maybe it's a team of like 3 or 4 people, and you know, it's a huge amount of work shipping a game on console. It's a lot of work shipping a game on any platform, but particularly on consoles, because you know, so there's a host of technical requirements. There's a load of localization rules. There's loads of like systems you need to integrate with, like achievements and other stuff. And you know, this isn't a trivial amount of work. That's hard, especially if you're a small developer. Um, so this basically means, right, because of this rule, developers that are thinking about releasing a game on Xbox, they either have to delay any and all other versions of the game until the Xbox version is ready as well, which means, you know, they can't be making any money off the PlayStation version or the Wii U version, keeping them afloat, helping them keep running so that they can actually get the Xbox version finished. Or you have to prioritize Xbox version first, and then we'll think about other platforms later. It's not. I guess the third option is you forget about Xbox. Just do it on, you know, PC, PlayStation, Nintendo platforms. There's plenty of ways to release a game successfully and sustain your business by just doing on those. But you know, these developers, they want to be on Xbox as well. They want to get their game into as many players' hands as possible. And you know, perhaps developers would prefer to target the platform with, like, I don't know, the largest proven install base, or the platform where they've got a really good relationship with the platform holders, that they know they're going to get good support for their game. Or, you know, perhaps one of the other platforms has like interface features or something else that means that platform's most suitable for their game. So, I mean, so that's the logistical aspect of it, where, you know, it's a tough thing to manage releasing your game on all these platforms. And Microsoft's release date parity policy throws a bit of a spanner into the works. It means you can't just arrange your plans on what best suits you and best suits the game. I mean, beyond that, the logistical aspect as well, there's other problems. So, as we've seen, like a lot of these hotly anticipated games that people are really looking forward to have been announced as being timed exclusive for PlayStation. So that's like a small window, like a month exclusivity for games like Hotline Miami 2, The Witness, Volume, and you know, loads more games. There's a big list of them. You can search for it. These are all going to be on PlayStation before they're anywhere else. So my understanding of a lot of these games where they've done a deal where it's 1 month timed PlayStation exclusive, it isn't in exchange for any funding off Sony. It's what they're getting from Sony is marketing support. So some of these games, they were, like, we saw a high profile announcement on stage at Gamescom for these games. And Sony are no doubt going to be doing other things to support the marketing of these games. I mean, for one reason, that Sony are compelled to do that because, you know, they're the only shop in town for a month, right? So they want to make sure everyone knows about this game and get in as many sales as possible whilst they're the only shop in town. So Sony also seems happy to let these developers talk about other versions of their games. There's no contractual obligation to deny it's coming to PC or it's coming to other consoles down the line. They're just saying it's first on PlayStation, and all these developers, like loads of them, they're saying, you know, the PC version will be out a month later. It's pretty straightforward. They're letting developers be transparent about this stuff. So for the most part, the developers I speak to tend to be platform agnostic. They just want to get their games into the hands of as many players as possible. You know, as long as there's a business case for supporting a platform, they're going to. They've not agreed this deal with Sony out of, you know, some irrational preference for PlayStation, some kind of bias or whatever. They signed these deals because it seems like, yeah, that's what's best for their game. They're getting something in return from Sony, and Sony aren't really asking for too much from them either. So it seems like it's been a sensible decision for a lot of these developers to make. I mean, we'll see when the games come out how it works out for them, but you can understand the reasoning for why developers have gone for that. but since releasing first on PlayStation is going to breach the Microsoft's release date parity policy, these games could be denied a release on Xbox, or at least a release on Xbox through self-publishing. So it seemed, I guess these developers could self-publish on PlayStation and then down the line do a deal with the publisher to release on Xbox. It's only self-publishing that they're barred from in the event of not meeting the release date parity policy. But so in some instances, signing with a publisher is great for games. It's great for developers. A lot of publishers have a lot of expertise and resources to help make the game be the best it can be. And they've got a financial stake in it. They want the game to do well. But being forced to work with a publisher, otherwise you're not allowed onto a platform. No one wants that, right? Like if you're going to be with a publisher, if a developer signs with a publisher, it should be because they've chosen that's what they want to do, not because there's no other way of releasing on a particular platform. At least, if you want what's best for developers, that seems to me that would be the case. So when I first saw this policy announced, when Microsoft announced the ID at Xbox program, I knew it was going to be problematic. It seems pretty... It doesn't require that much critical thinking that working out why this is going to cause problems for at least some developers anyway. And developers of games that Xbox gamers are going to want to play, their games. So I got in contact with the relevant people for the various different platform holders that are dealing with self-publishing on these platforms. Let's see. So I spoke to Sony's Shahid Kamal, and I tweeted at him, and literally within a minute, he said to me, "We have no such policy. We would never bar someone from self-publishing a game just because it had been on other platforms first." It's my understanding that Sony do arrange like proper exclusives where it's like 6 months or more, or around that time, and it's only on PlayStation. But typically that's for games where they've funded. It's not just been a baseline requirement for anyone who wants to self-publish on their platforms. I then tweeted at Nintendo's Dan Adelman. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. But anyway, yeah. Similarly, he confirmed to me Nintendo have no such policy. I mean, Nintendo self-publishing on Nintendo platforms, it's a bit more opaque. Like they say we'll come to you instead of you coming to us, and it's a different way of doing it. We'll see how well it works for them in the future, but they're not trying to strong arm anyone into being exclusive on them. At least that's how it seems to me. Even if potential exclusivity deals are on the table, it's not required. You're not banned from self-publishing unless you're if you've been on another platform first. And then I tweeted Microsoft's Chris Scharler, and he seems like a really nice guy, and everything I heard from developers that have worked with him said, he knows his stuff, he cares about games, he's great to work with, and that's the exact impression I got off him as well. But he couldn't give me a straight answer. I was trying to ask him, what happens to games that have been released elsewhere first, and he said, let's take this to email rather than just tweeting me a direct answer. And then, so we took it to email. I explained exactly what it was I wanted to know, and he couldn't give me an answer directly. He had to go through Microsoft's PR firm, called Edelman. Microsoft used for a while. And let me just read this exactly because I don't want to misquote them, because they gave me a statement that explains how they do it. So their PR firm said to me, "We do not require exclusivity arrangements. However, we do ask for day one parity with other console game platforms." So then I wanted to know, so what happens to the games that have already arranged timed exclusivity with another platform? What's gonna happen to them? And that was so their response to that was, "In instances where games have signed a timed exclusive with another platform, we'll work with them on a case-by-case basis." So it's not definitely the case that releasing on another console platform first means self-publishing is impossible on Xbox. But it's not clear what criteria they judge these cases on. They just say it's a case-by-case basis. So it's going to be really difficult for developers to plan around that. The time frame that they're going to want to know about self-publishing on, and whilst they're developing stuff and whilst they're making deals with one party, it's going to be hard because it's opaque and unpredictable. You don't know who they're going to waive the policy for and who they won't. So one example where they have waived the policy so far was Vlambeer's Nuclear Throne, which, so they've said that they're going to be timed exclusive on PlayStation, but Microsoft are going to let them self-publish after it's come out on PlayStation. So it's not clear why Microsoft have decided that. It could possibly be because, Vlambeer, they're a high-profile studio with big fan base. They've got a track record of making fantastic games. They've been around for a while. So, it kind of makes sense that you're going to want them on your platform. It could also be because the timeline, right? So Vlambeer signed a deal with Sony before the announcement of ID at Xbox. So it's not clear. Like Vlambeer, as far as I'm aware, don't know even if for their next game whether they'll be able to get this policy waived or not, or if they'll be in the same situation as a lot of other developers. Personally, I think it would make sense for any platform holder to move mountains to get Vlambeer on board if they want to make a game for you. But who knows which other games will be able to get this policy waived. So I've seen some people argue that this policy is reasonable because Microsoft are giving developers dev kits and they're giving the Unity Pro license. And this seems like a bit of a red herring to me because at the moment, if you look at the list of developers that have been accepted onto ID at Xbox for self-publishing so far from the currently announced list, anyway, it's all developers who, like most likely, they could probably afford to get dev kits and they could probably afford to get Unity licenses. They've shipped successful games in the past, maybe they've been around for a while, and it seems likely that they could probably get the money together from what they've got already. And if not, they could definitely find financing from somewhere. They could do like a small crowdfunding campaign to just pay for us to get dev kits that would easily succeed. Or they could get some venture capitalists to give them a bit of money. Or they could probably get money from like the Indie Fund or somewhere. If being able to buy dev kits and Unity licenses was the only barrier to self-publishing on Xbox, they would be able to get around that barrier. From the developers that they've currently announced anyway. Who knows, maybe they're going to open it up to more developers that would struggle to get that. But it seems like it's not really a game changer for the kind of studios that they're dealing with so far. Now, so I don't actually think that Microsoft should be under any obligation to offer preferable terms to developers, right? Like that's up to them. Their obligation is to their shareholders, their obligations to their board of directors. They've got to make money, and if that's the strategy, if their current strategy is what they think is the best way to do that, then that's what they're going to do. I'm just of the opinion that how platform holders treat developers is, for at least some consumers, it's a pretty significant factor in deciding which console you want to buy. So, that's the spirit I'm making this video in. I want people to be able to make more informed choices about which consoles they buy if you're currently deciding. We've already seen a few developers speak out about how this policy is negatively impacting them. You might have heard Witchbeam, who are developing a fantastic game called Assault Android Cactus. They publicly said that they'd love to release their game on Xbox, but this policy, unless it can be waived, is going to prevent them because they've agreed a timed exclusivity deal with Sony, and because of where they're up to in development, the Wii U version is going to be ready before the Xbox version's ready. If they'd have even if they got accepted onto ID at Xbox today, they'd probably not be able to get the Xbox version ready before the Wii U version. You'd have to speak to them to get a straight answer. I'm paraphrasing. Let's see. We've also heard from there's a developer called Beta Dwarf. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. They're making a game called Forced, and from what I heard, they've already finished the Wii U version. They've already finished the PS4 version, but they're holding them back. They can't release them yet because they're waiting until they've finished the Xbox version so they can ship all simultaneously. So they're not getting income from these finished games that they could be shipping, and Wii U gamers and PlayStation gamers are having to wait like an artificial additional delay because Microsoft are to some extent dictating their release date. So these are just developers that have already gone on the record saying this. No doubt there's some developers who are holding the cards close to the chest and are having issues with this that they've not aired publicly yet. I mean, that's speculation, but I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. So, I mean, to me, this seems bad for potential customers. It seems bad for developers, and ultimately bad for the industry. It's early days yet. Of course, Microsoft could alter these policies down the line, as we've seen them do with so many of their recent policies that there's been some kind of backlash against. But as things stand now, their stated policies are negatively impacting developers and customers, like already, and the console's not even been out that long. Of course, it's entirely possible that Nintendo and Sony have other policies which are causing issues for developers. So it's important that we keep an eye on what they're doing and their different policies and such. But as far as their publicly stated policies are today, it seems like they're a huge leap forward from how things used to be. And it's the developers and customers who stand to benefit from this by getting more games and developers being more successful. So I mean, I know how I feel about this. It seems to me like Microsoft are trying to strong arm developers into prioritizing their platform, even if it's not best for the developer or best for the game or best for consumers. Microsoft are looking out for their interests. It's going to be interesting seeing what happens, because there's a bunch of these games that are going to be launching on other platforms first. That, like, Microsoft are going to want Hotline Miami 2 on the Xbox. Of course they are. It's Hotline Miami 2. They're going to want N++ on Xbox because it's N++. Loads of people are going to want to play this game, and unless they're just going to keep waving this policy for more and more developers, they're going to lose out on these games. And if they're just going to be waving this policy all the time, it begs the question: why does the policy exist? If it seems like it's a bad policy if you have to keep breaking it. So I mean, it does seem like an untenable situation. Chris Sharla, who's heading up ID at Xbox, he seems like a really smart guy, right? Like, I don't necessarily think this is a policy that he chose and he wants. Maybe it's coming from higher up within Microsoft. Who knows? Again, that's speculation. But if that is the case, the more he hears from people that aren't happy about this, the more likely this situation is going to change. The more compelled Microsoft as a whole will be to reconsider it. So, if you feel strongly about this, if you feel like this is going to impact your decision to buy an Xbox, I'd recommend politely getting in touch. There's no need to send them any abuse or insults or anything. Just politely explain how this makes you feel towards their platform and what you think might be better. Because, yes, to some degree, I care about the industry and I care about the developers this is impacting. My main focus is the consumers, though, right? Like, I want to make sure people know what they're getting into when they buy one of these consoles and know the practices of how the platform holders are operating. And I think this policy is bad for consumers. So I hope this video was of some use. I thought I'd just explain some of the issues, some things going on with this topic. This whole speaking into my phone here is it's kind of new to me. I figured I might try something new, do a bit of sort of industry commentary. And I thought YouTube might be an interesting venue for doing that. Sorry, the production's a bit shonky. I don't know if any of you seen. If you're looking closely, I broke my glasses earlier on today, hold together with a bit of sellotape. But that doesn't stop me saying things of use, maybe. if this video goes down well, and it's something people are interested in hearing more about, I might see if I can do a follow-up video speaking to a few of the relevant parties, maybe get a few developers that are affected, see if I can get the different platform holders to have a chat about it, and share some of their perspectives, and give you more information to decide which console you're interested in buying on. Let me know if there's anything else in particular you want to hear about. If you want to follow other stuff I'm doing, you can see me on Twitter as Louis P. Subscribe to my YouTube thing. Click the subscribe button. I don't know where I'm pointing. I can't remember where the button is. Also, for those of you in the UK, you should know, in case you don't know me, I run Savvy Gamer, the video games discount site, where I'm telling people about all the best prices on games all the time, keep it up to date with across all different consoles, all different platforms. I guess that's it. Thank you for watching, and it's going to be an interesting few years. Like, we've seen more and more organized, vocal consumers impacting what the different players in the industry are doing. They're listening. They know what's going on in the public domain. They know what we're talking about. Let's hope they act on what they're hearing. Thanks.